Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for March 7th of 2024. Currently, we have a slight risk for central Texas into north central Texas into central Oklahoma, including southern Kansas into western Missouri. Threats for today do include two areas of 5% tornado risk, one for southern Kansas into northern Oklahoma along the border, as well as a 5% tornado risk for central Texas there, connected together by a 2% tornado risk for any storms that we may see in between. For damaging wind risk, we do have a 15% for damaging wind gusts, so we could see some scattered damaging wind gusts. For hail, we do have a 15% hail risk, as well as a couple hatched areas, one for that 5% tornado risk area, as well as another one extending from western Oklahoma into central Texas, where we could see the potential for damaging hail that may be able to reach diameters greater than 1 inch. For tomorrow, we do have a slight risk for a very good portion of the Dixie States and Mississippi River Valley back into the Central Plains, including Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, parts of Oklahoma, and eastern Texas. Threats for tomorrow do include a 5% tornado risk. This may potentially be upgraded into a conditional 10% tornado risk depending on how things go. I will be making a forecast on this tomorrow, and I may even go live. For our damaging wind risk, we do have a 15%. Where we could see some scattered damaging wind gusts for tomorrow. And for our hail risk, we do have a 15% with that hash area where we could see some gorilla hail. For our day 3 outlook, we do have a slight risk for a lot of the eastern seaboard, for Georgia, Alabama, northern Florida, South Carolina, and southern North Carolina. Taking a look at our WBC outlook, starting off their excessive rainfall forecast. For today, we do have a slight risk for north central Texas, including the Dallas-Fort Worth area with a marginal threat extending up into Missouri and parts of Illinois there, where we could see the potential for some scattered isolated flash flooding for that slight risk area. For tomorrow, we do have a moderate threat for flash flooding for central Alabama into parts of central Georgia, including the Atlanta downtown area. For our day 3 outlook for the 10th, we do have a slight risk for part of the eastern seaboard with a very large marginal threat that does extend as far north as New Hampshire and Vermont, but we could see the potential for some scattered flash flooding for North Carolina and South Carolina. For our winter weather outlooks and the potential for heavy snowfall for today, we are mainly looking at the potential for heavy snowfall across a lot of the Rockies, extending from Wyoming into northern New Mexico there, and then we may even be able to see some heavy snowfall for parts of Nebraska into parts of northeastern Colorado. For tomorrow, we are mainly looking at the potential for heavy snowfall for maybe a small portion of the upper peninsula of Michigan, as well as some of the Rockies for Colorado into New Mexico, and then along the mountain chain that extends from Washington into northern California. For our day 3 outlook on the 10th, we are looking at the potential for very heavy snowfall for a lot of the New England corridor, including some lake effect snow off of some of the lakes such as Lake Erie into Pennsylvania, Ohio, and New York, as well as a lot of heavy snowfall along that mountain chain that extends from Washington into northern California, as well as some of the northern Rockies there. And then we can also take a look at our surface analysis while we're here, so we can take a look at what's actually going to be triggering our risk for severe thunderstorms. First of all, we do have this dry line, and as that pushes eastward, that is going to fire off our severe thunderstorms across Texas into western Oklahoma. And then we also have a warm front with backed winds on the other side, and as that pushes northward, that is going to trigger the potential for some more isolated severe thunderstorms that may be able to produce a tornado or two. Taking a look at our weather model, starting off with our 500 millibars like we usually do. Let's focus on this trough that is currently leading to the potential for severe thunderstorms right now. As of right now, this trough is currently back into the Rocky Mountains, and it is positively tilted. However, its exit region is very broad, but it's also very zonal across a lot of the southern central plains. We are seeing mid-level flow potentially upwards of 60 to potentially 70, 80 miles per hour further down into southern Texas. However, back into Oklahoma and southern Kansas, it may drop down from 60 to 50 to potentially even 40. And that is going to support the risk for our severe thunderstorms for today, with regards of our frontal systems and our dry line to actually trigger those storms. And then something I did forget to mention is that this cold front is also expected to push down from the north here, and that should also help with storm development. But I think the majority of our storms should fire along this warm front as well as this dry line. And as we see mid-level flow upwards of 80 to 70 miles per hour, that is definitely going to give us quite a lot of shear, but we will also have to look at our low-level jet and our 200 millibars for our hail risk. Taking a look at our 700 millibars and these dashed contours here, this is our 850 millibars, so we can take a look at our low-level jet and how that's going to affect the potential for tornadoes as well as our speed shear. Across this region, we are looking at a kind of mid-low level jet. I mean, we do have a low-level jet nonetheless with a 700 millibar flow that may be able to get upwards of 20 to 30 to potentially 40 miles per hour. However, for that northern 5% tornado risk, we do have much more limited 700 millibar flow and a much more limited low-level jet the further north you go. So overall, our low-level jet, it's kind of decent. It's not all the way there. However, we should definitely still be able to get quite a bit of shear out of this, and we should definitely still see tornado risk nonetheless with this. Taking a look at our 200 millibars on pivotal weather here, I do want to take a look at a couple of things. Let's focus on the slight risk for the southern half of the slight risk for western Oklahoma into central Texas. We are looking at a very strong upper level jet here. With upper level wind speeds that are getting upwards of 140, 130, maybe not 140. We are expecting to see those more so back to Arkansas and Oklahoma, but we could see potentially upwards of 130, maybe 140, 120 knots of upper level flow at 200 millibars. That is going to provide us with a very large amount of shear. We shouldn't see anywhere from like I don't think we're going to see 90 knots of bulk shear. We may, however, we should definitely see a ton of shear come out of this, especially compared to how weak our how weak our low-level jet was compared to how strong our upper-level jet is. That's almost a 100-knot difference when you think about it. And then for the Kansas region, I do want you to focus on the isobars here. We're looking for defluency, which is where those isobars spread apart. Hold on, that's a terrible drawing. It's where those isobars spread apart, so that kind of creates a void in the atmosphere. And if that happens in the upper levels, it will take air from the low levels and the mid levels, and it will rise upwards to fill that gap because the atmosphere is a gas. That's how you get widespread lift as well. So follow the isobars here, and you can tell how they are kind of split a little bit, which is kind of pointing a fire hose for that 5% tornado risk for southern Kansas there. And that's kind of what's helping with that 5% tornado risk right there. A bunch of chasers are currently in that 5% tornado risk area, especially because the warm front also does have backed winds, where our winds are going from the north in the warm sector, but then immediately switching back towards the west out of the east. So that is going to provide a lot of surface vorticity and overall better shear for the potential for tornadoes across southeastern Kansas. Taking a look at our shear while we're on the topic of our upper level setup. And we can take a look at what type of directional shear we are expected to see out of this. So focus on that 5% tornado risk for southern Kansas for now, and then we'll move to the central Texas 5%. We have a ton of storm relative felicity along that warm front boundary across southern Kansas there, potentially upwards of 500 meters squared a second squared of storm relative felicity, which is very, very supportive of a tornado risk. And if we have any sort of instability whatsoever across that region, we should definitely see the potential for maybe a few tornadoes to come out of that. We should see more like one or two brief tornadoes. We shouldn't see like a whole tornado outbreak, but we should definitely see very good potential for tornadoes across southeastern Kansas in that little area. However, for the 5% for central Texas, we do have significantly less storm relative felicity, but we still have around 200, 300 meters squared a second squared of storm relative felicity. I think the main thing that the SPC is focusing on for this southern 5% tornado risk is the low-level jet, because we are expected to see the bulk of the low-level jet mainly blow through this area. That's going to provide the majority of the shear to this area to support the potential for tornadoes. Taking a look at our hail risk and our bulk shear, so we can take a look at our speed shear and how that's going to affect our hail risk for today. We are looking at a very insane amount of speed shear for western Texas here. Into southern western Texas, we are seeing potentially upwards of 90 knots of shear. So I was kind of wrong about my previous prediction. I said that we may be able to get 90 knots of shear, and we do have that. Not sure what that boxes that just appeared. I think it's a severe thunderstorm watch, but I've never seen it like that on Radar Omega. But we should definitely see a insane amount of bulk shear, especially into Texas here, and that should definitely provide the potential for some significant hail across central Texas. I'm not too sure about further north into Oklahoma. It may be mainly instability driven. However, the majority of our bulk shear that would indicate the potential for significant hail is further down into southern and central Texas. So overall, I'm not really too confident about the hail risk as we do move into western Oklahoma or the hatched area for southern Kansas, but we should definitely see the potential for significant hail across central Texas tonight. Taking a look at our composite reflectivity, so we can go over general radar analysis as well as the timing for our severe thunderstorms. I am a little bit tardy to the party. We do have storms currently already ongoing across the dry line as well as into western Oklahoma. And you can see on the composite reflectivity here that a lot of these cells are producing significant hail. So as of right now, we currently do have storms ongoing. We are going to continue to see upscale growth in a lot of these storms for the next hour or two, and that is going to move into the Dallas area anywhere from now to probably around 1 a.m. And we should see our storms move into the Oklahoma City area anywhere from 8 p.m. to potentially 2 to 3 a.m. Keep in mind that I am in Eastern Standard Time, so do be sure to shave an hour off of off of the time for your location in the Central Plains. And then we currently do have like a weak thunderstorm currently ongoing for that 5% tornado risk for southern Kansas. However, we should potentially see a supercell or a couple storms at least develop in the slight risk area in the next hour or so, and that should rapidly organize into a mess kind of. So overall, we are mainly looking at a mess. It's going to be very messy convection. We shouldn't really see well-defined supercells, isolated supercells, but everything should be really a mess. And then another thing that I am watching is around 2 a.m. We may be able to see another round of storms that may fire up if we can get a second push along that dry line. A lot of models have been indicating a second round of severe thunderstorms for western Texas. I haven't really checked the models for this, so I'm not really sure how well this will go, but keep in mind that we may get a second round of storms to fire off around 2 a.m., and that may impact the Dallas-Fort Worth area around 7 to 6 a.m., around the very early morning, around the start of the morning commute. Taking a look at our dew points, so we can start to take a look at what the actual environment that these storms are expected to be like, what that's going to look like. So let's start off with our dew points, and we can also take a look at our dry line. You can see on our dew point models that cold front that's also expected to push from the north, and that may help with some storms, especially across western Oklahoma. However, for the environment in the warm sector to the west of east to the dry line, we are expected to see immediate dew points that may be able to get upwards of the 60s as of right now. We are seeing dew points that are around the low 60s to mid 60s. Which are definitely fairly decent. We should definitely see some decent instability come out of that. I don't think our instability is going to be crazy high, but we should definitely get some decent instability out of that. Further north into western Oklahoma, our dew points may be a little bit more limited as they may push back into our 50s as well as our low 60s, and maybe even drop down into the 40s in some areas. And then into southern Kansas, our dew points may also be limited, may be more limited to the 50s into the low 60s. So overall, not the best, but overall not really complaining all that much because these are definitely some fairly decent dew points we can get for some fairly decent instability. Taking a look at our temperatures, one thing I can look at is is the cold front and the warm front. We're kind of seeing a weird setup here where we have the cold front coming out of the north. I thought it was gonna impinge on this cold front, or sorry, the warm front, and impinge on the potential of supercell development across western Kansas or eastern Kansas. I'm not really too sure how this cold front is going to interact, but it does look like it is mainly going to be impacting the western side of that southern low. However, again, this warm front is going to continue to push to the north, and that's going to fire off the potential for a supercell to fire in southern Kansas. And then again, that dry line, which isn't shown on our temperature models, but we are definitely seeing some fairly decent heat across this area. Keep in mind that it is becoming nighttime, where we are going to begin to lose the daytime heating. But currently, we see temperatures that are around the 60s, the upper 60s into low 70s. Definitely not too bad. Should definitely give us some decent instability. Again, shouldn't give us a whole lot of instability, but should be fairly decent. Taking a look at our lapse rates on pivotal weather for both environments, mainly focusing on western Oklahoma and into southern Kansas there, we definitely have some fairly decent lapse rates here. They're definitely not zero, and they should definitely help with the risk for severe thunderstorms and overall instability, and should also overall help with a bunch of different things, including storm robustity, and storm organization, and potentially the hail risk as well. And we definitely have some fairly decent lapse rates. And then another reason that may have just clicked with me is that the potential for significant hail may be extending into western Oklahoma is because of those lapse rates, which are going to make the optimal hail development layer closer down to the ground, and that's going to be easier to reach with a stronger updraft. So not only should these lapse rates help with the overall instability, but may also be able to help with that hail risk. And then we are expected to see lower end instability, or sorry, lower end lapse rates as we move into Texas. Our lapse rates aren't going to really be the best as we have across western Texas. It should be fairly decent. We aren't expected to have nothing, but our lapse rates are going to drop off significantly the further east you go. Taking a look at our convective inhibition, mainly focusing on the storms that have already fired up along the dry line here. I'm kind of concerned for how the convective inhibition is going to affect our storms, because after storms develop, after the sun sets and it becomes colder and we lose surface instability, we are expected to see a rapid increase in convective inhibition, and that may limit storms as we move later into tonight. So we are going to have to watch for that, see how that may affect storms, and I'm kind of concerned that it may kill them off as we move into tonight. However, we will have to watch for how that does affect storms later tonight. And the same goes for further up north into Oklahoma and Kansas, where we are expected to see a ton of convective inhibition be introduced as we do move into tonight. Culminating this all together so we can take a look at our most unstable instability, and then we'll move on to our various forms of instability and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms for today. As for our most unstable instability, we are definitely looking at some fairly decent most unstable CAPE. Should definitely fuel the risk for severe thunderstorms. The values are going to be ranging anywhere from the mid 1000s to the triple digits, the upper triple digits, and then they may be able to reach closer to the upper 1000s in some areas, but the majority of the area should see mid to low 1000s to upper triple digits. Fairly decent. Should definitely fuel the risk for severe thunderstorms, but it's also nothing crazy. So we shouldn't really see a crazy risk for severe thunderstorms with this. Our instability is fairly mediocre, but definitely supportive of the risk for severe thunderstorms, the potential for tornadoes, hail, and damaging wind gusts. For the 5% tornado risk for southern Kansas, we are looking at some really decent instability here as well, where we may be able to see CAPE values that may be able to get upwards of the mid 1000s, and should definitely be able to fuel the risk for severe thunderstorms, maybe a tornado up there as well. Taking a look at our surface instability and how that's going to affect our risk for severe thunderstorms. As of right now, it doesn't look like the majority of our most unstable CAPE is going to be translating down from our the majority of our surface CAPE is going to be translated down from our most unstable CAPE, meaning that storms should have no problem tapping into the surface boundary, and should definitely be able to support the risk for severe thunderstorms with the possibility of tornadoes, with some of those surface rooted storms. So we shouldn't really see any elevated storms with this. but that's all I really had to say for surface. Taking a look at our 0 to 3 kilometer to surface instability as at the mix layer, as well as our surface vorticity on our mesoanalysis page. What this does is it's kind of a tornado cheat code, because you have our surface vorticity and our 0 to 3 kilometer to surface instability. And where those overlap, meaning that there's surface vorticity, there's rotation at the surface, and there's instability that can turn that surface vorticity into the vertical, and aid in tornado genesis. These kind of act as tornado cheat codes kind of wherever they interlap. So a big area that we were noticing was for that 5% tornado risk for southern Kansas there. We saw a ton of overlap between strong surface vorticity, as well as strong 0 to 3 kilometer surface instability. As of right now, we don't have as much. However, we do have a storm that is currently in an area where we do have quite a bit of surface instability, or in quite a lot of overlap. And then we also have here along the dry line, where we may have to watch for the potential for a tornado. Of course, we will have to watch this entire area where tornadoes may be possible for the potential for tornadoes, but the overlap areas are the biggest areas to watch. Finally, culminating this all together, we're going to be taking a look at our composite parameters, starting off with our energy helicity index values, so we can get an idea of our tornado risk for both 5% tornado risk areas. Again, focus on the 5% tornado risk areas where they have the biggest energy helicity index values. Again, along the warm front there, where we have a lot of surface vorticity and 0 to 3 kilometer instability because of the backed winds. We have a hotspot for energy helicity index values, especially in that 5% tornado risk area. We actually currently have a tornado warning ongoing for this area, and I can actually take a look at that really quickly, or turn on warnings just so you can see it. Yeah, tornado warning right there. So again, we definitely have the potential for tornado risk along this warm front boundary, and energy helicity index values are supporting that. And then across the 5% tornado risk for central Texas here, it is a little bit of a mess, but we are definitely seeing some fairly supportive energy helicity index values that would indicate the potential for tornadoes across this region. And then again, as a rule of thumb, along the dry line, we aren't really expected to see a whole lot of the ingredients to really support all that much of a tornado risk, which is why we have a 2% extending across the rest of the dry line, where we may have to watch for the potential for some additional tornado risk there as well. Taking a look at our mesoanalysis, so we can go over our various hail parameters and the risk for damaging hail across this region. Funny enough, we have the majority of our indicators for large hail. We are on large hail parameter, mainly out of the way of the strong 500 millibar jet. The 500 millibar jet is mainly further down to the south, and that's where the majority of our bulk shear is and our speed shear. But then we can also take a look at the rest of our hail composite models. Our significant hail is indicated for that low hash area for that 5% tornado risk along the Kansas border, as well as into parts of western Oklahoma and central Texas, and that's where we are expected to be watching for the potential for large hail and potentially damaging hail. Then for our SARS hail size, we can kind of get an idea of how big our hail may be. As of right now, we are mainly looking at a hail indicator along the border here for Oklahoma and Kansas, where it is indicating mainly around 1 to 1.75 inches of in diameter of hail. And then we can also take a look at hail percentage. Again, we do have that indicator along the Oklahoma-Kansas border, which again, funny enough, isn't where the 500 or 200 millibar jet is. And then we also do have quite a lot of areas sprinkled all over the place for the potential for hail. Taking a look at our wind gust model, so we can get an idea of what our damaging wind gusts may be like across this area. Across western Oklahoma mainly is what it's looking like for the potential of scattered and potentially strong damaging wind gusts that are definitely going to blow around any loose unsecured objects, and they are indicated to impact the Oklahoma City region around 9 p.m. So keep that in mind, where you guys could get some pretty strong damaging wind gusts across the downtown area of Oklahoma City. However, for Central Texas here, we are seeing much less risk for severe damaging wind gusts. We are seeing, again, the potential for some scattered damaging wind gusts, but they aren't nearly going to be as strong as up into western Oklahoma. I think there may be overall a little bit of a better potential for stronger damaging wind gusts and overall a more widespread damaging wind gusts across western Oklahoma. Other model runs have been indicating that. So again, we should still see the potential for damaging wind gusts across this region. However, it does look like Oklahoma may have the best chance in the strongest damaging wind gusts of tonight. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator and join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. If you live in any of the areas that I covered for today, please stay with the alert for the time being. If you notice anything might have been wrong with this forecast or you'd like to make a suggestion or ask a question, please leave a comment. 3 other channels I highly suggest you check out are One Nation Weather, Weather Watcher, and JaxonWX. JaxonWX. The links to their channels will be in the description, and hopefully I'll be able to see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.